cultural aspect, the cultural dimension in the broadest sense of the word, not the artistic culture, but probably even more importantly, the culture of who we are, of what we are, has come very much to the fore. And this is why I believe that this sequence of events which are held by the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy and which are very revealing of the broad range of topics we're dealing with, starting from China, going through Russia, Europe, the United States of America, tells you indeed not only how broad but also how complex the issues of today are. Internationalization and globalization have become not only a regular term when describing the state of affairs today, but also a trend and an integral part of society which is not likely to end or to disappear or to be completed anytime soon. We all know that globalization started with lots of contradictory reactions. There were the champions of globalization, and there were, of course, the opponents and adversaries, right away adversaries to globalization. Regardless of the motives of either group, it goes on. It just proceeds, and I think it's already beyond our control to think of whether or not globalization should be encouraged, supported, or, on the other end, blocked. So today we face common globalized threats which come from unstable political regions, from cyberspace, energy supply routes, and my country is a very, very vivid example of this cross nature, of this combination of modern risks and modern threats that we are faced with. But I will refer to specific issues of my country and my regions later on. The global nature of many widely diverse modern problems, such as environment, poverty, international terrorism, calls for a globalized approach to crisis and conflicts through cooperation among nations. The need to enhance this cooperation and deepen understanding among peoples, cultures, and faiths in particular has never been more important. In that respect, intercultural communication is no longer an option but a necessity, since the ability to navigate cultural differences is key in preventing conflicts and essential to effective cooperation. If we look back in time, we will see that, after all, we have our roots, all of us, in the same civilizations. Our major religions stem from the same root. And the principles of behavior which guide a good Jew, Muslim, or Christian have more in common than we might even think. The issues with which our societies are grappling now are also remarkably similar. We all must reconcile old and new values, demographic and economic changes, and find jobs and opportunities for the young. That's why we need to be constantly working to improve understanding among different cultures and religions, both within the European Union and around the world. I would especially emphasize here this unique relationship, the transatlantic relationship, which is practically inherent to both the United States and Europe. And when we discuss the situation in either of the two parts of one, what I believe to be permanent, steady whole, we really need to make sure that, first of all, this type of understanding is reached within the transatlantic context. We must use every opportunity to discuss our common concerns and to develop the intercultural cooperation which is so essential to mutual respect and understanding. We should encourage exchanges at every level, and this is probably the first big general opportunity when we speak of opportunities, to use human contacts, dialogue, every opportunity of meeting people and talking to people. We should encourage exchanges at every level: civil society, the media, public institutions, governments. The relations between different ethnicities, religions, and cultures, respectively, communities, represent one of the most important and most sensitive issues of modern global politics. Responsible leaders, intellectuals, religious authorities, citizens throughout the world endeavor to overcome the prejudice that conflicts and crises are triggered by all over the world, and as well as to create major awareness and growing awareness about the importance of respect for different cultures and religions. I would like to refer to the region of Southeastern Europe, where this particular issue has additional implications. You would know where that is geographically. My country happens to have probably the most complex geography in the whole region. And I've often joked with both audiences and privately that Bulgaria happens to be on the wrong side of what used to be former Yugoslavia. If only we could somehow jump over, maybe we would have had a different historical and social and civil fate. But anyway, we are where we are, and we are surrounded by countries which do not have less problems than we do regarding the very complicated processes of transition that have started after the fall of the Berlin Wall. This is an old part of Europe with old legacy and inherited problems which unfortunately have not yet found their final solution. And all of this comes now, today, not to borders anymore, not to hard security or hard power anymore, but of how we relate to one another, how we communicate, how we cooperate, disregarding all the conflicts of the past, which is the really difficult part of it, and looking ahead into the future. But the Balkans, as Churchill once said, seem to have too much history to bear. And that is what we are facing now today. We have to address some issues which are related to ethnic and religious characteristics, but this can only happen by way of dialogue. And the best possible approach for a region like ours, which is practically born out of cultural complexity and diversity, is to try and establish a language of compromise, of positive attitude, and indeed trust in order to be able to resolve these issues. Because I'm thinking of other parts of the world, even of this country, America. I'll probably be making references to the United States more than once today. But we have so much concentrated on a relatively so small territory that sometimes it may be too crowded, too populated, too suffocating at times to sort out different interests, different views of life, different objectives and different goals. And this is why it has always been our conviction. When I say we, this is of the modern governments of the countries in the region, that our best solution is the European Union. By having all the countries members of the European Union, will definitely at least establish a pattern, a structure to follow in resolving the issues. Because you know, I'm sure everybody knows that, even from personal, let alone public and political experience, that no one is a prophet in one's own village. In the same way, when two neighboring countries start resolving an issue, they can never end up, or very hardly they will find a win-win answer to what they're trying to resolve. This is why the European Union, with a kind of a supranational instruments and tools of having a more objective, less passionate, more, I would say, rules-oriented assessment of facts and of realities in the individual countries would be the most helpful instrument. So when we speak of opportunities, again, I would say that to us, the countries of Europe and of Southeastern Europe, the European Union is one such opportunity. Another membership which has been crucial to most of our countries, we still have a couple to join, is NATO. Yes, this is totally hard security. This is hard power. But that gave the sense of being protected in a group of many, in an alliance, even against some hypothetical, if not truly realistic, military threats. There is an interesting development, though. Even NATO is looking already at some civilian projects. In other words, we know today, and this is why I emphasize the importance of ICD, we know today that the past century, the 20th century, may have been the century of resolving international problems predominantly by military solutions or very hard, very difficult negotiations which inevitably ran into security matters, strictly security matters. Today, it's a different era, it's a different age. Not to forget mentioning the internet revolution, which has completely also changed the way in which we can relay, again as establishments, as political establishments or civil society establishments, how we can relay to the general public. So in this very complex new environment of the 21st century, when again transparency is probably the basic characteristics through the social networks, through the very easy, real-life, immediate way of communication, completely different tools need to be applied, tools in the sense of attitudes and approaches. So this is why, as I say, for the countries of my region, the European Union and NATO have been crucial in terms of regulating the processes within the countries in a national context as well. Mind you that today the European Union directives have a primat. They're higher in terms of legal effect than the national legislation. And only recently we had a situation which was extremely embarrassing for my national parliament, but which is a brilliant illustration of what I'm telling you. My country is a patriarchal society in many ways, and especially in terms of the attachment to land, to farmers' land. It has been historically more of a farmer's country, of a peasant country, until the 20th century. It was industrialized later in its development. And even today, you will always find this very tender, I would call it, very sensitive attitude to land. Of course, in a market society, in the free movement of capital, of goods, and of people around, you cannot keep your land just to yourself. You don't even have the interest of doing that, because you can never develop it as well as it can be developed if you have more partners from other countries even. So we have this obligation under the EU directives that the market of land should open for free purchase as of January the 1st. And that's an obligation, full stop. So under the pressure of some populistic tendencies in the country right now, and I would call them also regrettably nationalistic, but this is something which I will touch upon again, the parliament voted as if in a frenzy. They voted with majority that the government should postpone the freeing of the market, which is supposed to happen, as I say, of January 1st next year, for purchase of land to other EU juridical or physical persons, which is a juridical nonsense. It cannot happen because, as I said, European law is an overriding power over any national decisions. And yet it was voted because of, as I say, very short-term, very short-sighted, populistic, partisan, nationalistic motives. And now the parliament is faced with a very, very embarrassing task of somehow handling this situation, because otherwise the next step to take is to just leave the EU as a member, which of course cannot happen. So this is an illustration of how hard a transition may be with regard to the cultural advancement of a society and of a nation. Basically, this rather crowded region, though, gave some positive effects, particularly over the past decades and centuries. And this is a general tolerance among different ethnic groups. And Bulgaria has been known for having this ages-old tolerance, because in Bulgarian, the population, the Bulgarian nation, or people, I should say, is made up of course, Bulgarians, Muslim Turks, Jews, Armenians, all sorts of ethnicities and faiths, which have been living very peacefully, very, very harmoniously together for ages. This is also due to a fact, historical fact, that Bulgaria was part of the Ottoman Empire for 500 years. It was invaded by the Ottoman Empire back in the 15th century and got its liberty only 500 years later. So that creates already this instinct. It's an inbred instinct of cohabitating with different faiths and different ethnic groups. This was probably best proven back in 1943, in the years of the Holocaust. And since this year it is the 70th anniversary of the Holocaust, I would like to say, or rather inform you of something which you may not know, that in the whole of Europe, Bulgaria was the only country that practically protected all its Jews from deportation. That's almost 50,000 Jews, the entire Jewish population of the country. Regrettably, there was another group of 11,343 Jewish people who were non-Bulgarians but lived in territories adjacent to Bulgaria. That's a part of Macedonia, a part of northern Greece, who were administered temporarily by Bulgaria at the time of the war. That was the first major dispatch to the Nazi camps, who unfortunately couldn't be saved. That was the eye-opener to what the final solution came down to. So anyways, given the fact that we are marking the 70th anniversary, I really need to share with you that that was one of the stellar examples of tolerance, when different groups of society, they just stood up and did not allow a pro-fascist official government of the country at the time to round up the Jews and just load them on box carts and send them off to the gas chambers. This is a great story, and we try to tell it around because of the great lesson it gives to new generations. And I believe that it is particularly important to talk about those years or those events now, because unfortunately in Europe, and I would say regrettably, I'm trying to think hard. Is there a European country that makes an exception? And I'm not sure there is. There is a rise of nationalistic parties in Europe, which is a very troublesome sign. And it is related to many developments lately. Of course, it's the crisis. Of course, it's the very limited at least decreasing number of job opportunities. It is this lack of trust and maybe uncertainty of daily life. But it is a trend which unfortunately is not dying out. On the contrary, we see it manifested in most of the European countries. And this is, again, where institutions like ICD and the civil organizations and the women's organizations, if you wish, because I believe that women are the last to yield to any extremism motivated by faith or ethnicity, should step forward and really try to bring down this trend. It is generally acknowledged that Bulgaria had this very unusual, very specific ethno-religious model, but I'm afraid that it's also under a lot of stress and it's cracking. This is also happening these days as a result of a very alarming situation, which is a problem all countries are now dealing with, and this is Syria, the humanitarian situation there and the refugees leaving the country. Bordering on Greece and Turkey, Bulgaria is the second recipient of refugees from that particular direction. In a matter of a month and a half or so, the number is a little under 8,000. Of course, it bears no comparison to the refugees in Turkey or the Lebanon, but given the size of the country and its economic potential, this is absolutely overwhelming. And what is noticeable already is some kind of dissatisfaction, unrest among the population, or certain groups at least, especially among those more nationalistically minded groups, not to take refugees and not to try and keep them in the country. So all of this requires a very, very serious and well thought out, very well tailored effort by the part of governments, of course, parliaments for sure, because it's the elected representatives that talk to their constituencies. And when we speak of opportunities, I would strongly emphasize the role of parliamentarians. And again, the trick here, how would an elected representative act? Would he or she be earning a next seat, or her next seat, or would they be leaders in trying to have the regular people overcome certain tendencies which may in the medium term or in the long term prove to be detrimental to the whole nation. So this is another test of time which we are faced with. There are two major factors or actors or tools: media and education. And this is what we always need to keep in mind. Today's world is a media world. And again, another truism: perception is stronger than reality. That we know very well. I remember George Soros arguing that this is true not only for the soft power, but also very true for the financial sector. So what we need to do, and this is the hardest battle, this is not a battle with one front line or an argument at the two sides of a table, of a negotiating table where you negotiate terms. This is the hardest battle of all, to fight perceptions or to change perceptions. Where do we stand on this one with regard to what I believe has been the transformative influence of the second half of the 20th and early 21st century, the United States of America? You've heard briefly of what I've been doing in my professional career. A better part of it was dedicated to the relations with this country, my country's relations with this country, and also in a multilateral way in terms of the transatlantic dialogue. I strongly believe that America has been and should remain a leader, because I know that a world without a positive leading force may go into too many directions and may get nuclearized in a negative way. I know that it's extremely complicated for America itself. Because America is criticized when it shoots out of the hip. It's also criticized when it stays back and doesn't do anything. So I wouldn't like to be in the shoes of the Americans, be it politicians or civil leaders or NGOs, which are the think tanks, which are such a power in this society and outside. So it is important to tailor well, to tailor gently America's role, but at this point in time, I'm afraid nobody's happy. America is not happy with what's happening to it and in the world in general. We are not happy that nothing seems to be taken to a conclusive kind of solution. Syria to begin with, since I mentioned Syria. So obviously the world is now at a crossroads when we're all looking for maybe a new, not maybe, definitely, a new pattern of relationships among those countries which definitely want to see globalization succeed, and we've not yet found the solution. I think that regardless of everything, the United States are more advanced in a way in this intercultural practice, if I can describe it that way. Maybe because it did start as a country, it did start as a melting pot. I know very well all the domestic issues here, and yet America is somehow called upon to be up to its own perception of itself. And that's not always easy, I know. But at least, as I say, there is experience accumulated here in this country. There is this very smart, well, there are many smart people in this world, but I particularly like Timothy Garton Ash, who is a well-known English historian and journalist, and who had this aphoristic thought that there's one thing that brings Europeans together, or maybe it was there's one thing that all Europeans have in common, and this is America. For obvious reasons. We all have our own expats in this country, and there is always this link, this bond, which is not just political or doesn't rest on expediency. It's people and it's heritage, it's legacy. So this is something which needs to be used. Another opportunity is using the expat communities both ways, using trade opportunities both ways, because again, thinking of this interrelationship, this is the biggest trade volume worldwide, the transatlantic trade volume. So all this does not bear strictly on, as I say, on the policy of power, but offers opportunities for building up these bridges of trust. Now, what Timothy Garton Ash said recently over the situation here, I think it was just before the shutdown was resolved, he said, well, it's time for a new Christopher Columbus, only from the other end. Now America should find its own Christopher Columbus, who will tell how the world looks like from the other end. In other words, this need of being more sensitive to assessments coming from more quarters is there. It's on the table. But again, my deep conviction is that the best solutions would be found by bringing together the positive experiences of both Europe as a broader region and America, talking to all other regions in the world, a long process indeed, but nothing can replace dialogue. Media, as I said, and education, that's a hard one, because we know that media do have their own agenda. I was just looking at, and I had it taken out for you today. I hope it's in here. If it's not, I'll try to just tell it in my own words. In this country, for example, yes, this is, we have all sorts of high-profile I would call it region-oriented media like Al Jazeera, that has very big coverage in this country. There is Xinhua have their own TV channel. There is a Russian TV channel as well, operating in America. So of course they would all pursue their own line of interpretation, their own political agenda. But I'm afraid that if everybody tries to pursue a strictly political agenda, then we may again go into that endless process of disagreement and lack of understanding of what the best interest of the people is. So education, which is no longer teaching, this is what struck me. Teaching belongs again to a past century. Now we have to educate, not just to teach. Knowing the alphabet is very important, but there's a lot to go on top of it. And I would say that both our opportunities and our challenges lie in these two areas, media and education, in order to be able to change perceptions in a positive way. Thank you.